Welcome to your 2026 Cosmic Weather Forecast. My name is Adeana. I'm an intuitive astrologer. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, it's more a presentation. I will be going through each month of 2026, January to December. We're going to go over a couple of charts for each month and really dive deep into the energy and kind of we're going to touch on each of the major things we're kind of going through, but there are a few big alignments that we have this year that I will be creating separate videos for where we really dive deep into the past, present, and future of these alignments. One of them being Uranus entering Gemini, the Neptune Saturn conjunction, which we are having here in a few short weeks. I will be making a separate forecast, but we will be touching on those alignments in this video. Now, before we get into the forecast, I just wanted to mention some major themes for 2026 because there's so much coinciding energy that's pointing us in one direction of changes to leadership, changes to government, changes to technology, AI, ways and forms of communication, how we connect to one another. There is so much coinciding energy that I really do believe over the next few years, we are in this rapid fire kind of overload of AI, technology, changes to government, changes to leadership, changes to countries and boundaries and borders and all of that. And I think that we are going to see a lot of those changes begin this year because we have all the outer planets shifting signs. We have Neptune and Saturn entering Aries, which is going to bring changes to government and leadership. And again, I want to make a separate video just focusing on that so you guys can get a really good idea of what that's going to bring. But we are going to touch on it in this forecast as well. I also want to post a separate video going really deep into the Uranus and Gemini transit because we will have Uranus and Gemini for 8 years. And I want to post a video separately going deep into that energy and how that's going to affect all 12 rising signs. But again, we will touch on that a little bit in this forecast and go over some of the charts. Now, I just wanted to mention Pluto and Aquarius really jump started us into this whole AI and tech kind of venture and theme and world. And Uranus entering Gemini this year, we got a sneak peek of that last year, but this year, Uranus makes that final ingress into Gemini, Gemini ruling communication and ways of communication and community. Like all of that stuff is about to really change. If we just think of Uranus and Taurus, because we've had Uranus and Taurus the last 8 years, Taurus ruling our money and financial systems and food. Think of how Uranus has really changed that in our world, right? Like how much have we really gone through when it's come to farming and food and how food is made, what food is, and everything around veganism and all of that, the financial systems and crypto and all of the kind of avenues that we went through with that. So Uranus can really bring a lot of chaos and disruption to those areas of our world. And in Gemini, it can definitely be ways of communication, social media. One of the things that kind of came to me, which was really interesting, is like now we have a cell phone and we talk to each other on a cell phone. But what if there is like something that we can't even imagine or foresee because it's like out of our mind. It's like too futuristic. It's like that is like the energy we're coming into, that there's going to be ways of us communicating to one another that we can't even wrap our minds around yet. Like, you know what I mean? And then another energy that we have, another change we have this year that is also amping up this whole tech and AI world is the North Node is going to enter Aquarius in July. So again, I'll be making a separate video going deep into that energy. However, that is what is really going to throw us into major changes, which we're already seeing. Like since Pluto has entered Aquarius the last couple of years, like we've really seen this AI world pick up. And I believe that it's almost like I feel like it's going to get to a point where it's completely um you can't tell the difference in real what's real and what's not. And we're already almost there, but like it's going to get worse. And so I've been saying for the last year or two, like you really have to establish a solid intuitive knowingness in this world today so that you can have an internal compass to let you know, if what you're seeing is real or not real. Like you have to have that human connection and gut feeling to know what's real and what is not real. Okay, so I'm done with my kind of intro into the forecast. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Now let's get into it. So let's start off with our 2026 eclipse dates. So our first solar eclipse is going to be February 17th, 2026, and this will be our first eclipse in Aquarius. It'll be at 28 degrees of Aquarius, and this eclipse is what is going to initiate us into this cycle of eclipses. So since last year, when did the nodes entered Virgo and Pisces? I believe it was January of last year. Um, because it's usually like July, but yeah, the the nodes spent about 18 months in each sign. However, because it we end up having eclipses even when the nodes, like for example, the nodes are still in Virgo and Pisces, but we're going to have an eclipse in Aquarius. So we really want to pay attention to this eclipse because whatever is showing up for us at this time, individually in our own lives and collectively out in the world, that is going to give us an idea of what the next 2 years is going to bring with this North Node Aquarius energy. So we really want to be paying attention at this eclipse, you know, a couple of weeks before, a couple of weeks after, what is showing up in your world, what is going on, what is showing up in the collective, what are some major themes, especially in this area of life. And again, I'll be making a separate forecast where I get into this energy in all 12 rising signs. So that'll really help give you a bit of a guide to how this can be affecting you and the major themes and topics. But you just want to be paying attention around this time and around the time of these eclipse dates, like what's showing up. That's going to give you an idea of how this Leo Aquarius energy is working with you. And now on March 3rd, we will have our total lunar eclipse in Virgo at 12 degrees. And so, whatever you've been moving through with this Virgo Pisces story, and how I look at eclipses is this is basically a 2 year story playing out. And I have so much personal proof of this happening in my life. Like every time there is an eclipse, there's something else around the theme that the eclipses are changing for you, whatever that story is. Every time we have an eclipse, there's like this new chapter to the story, this new change that comes in. There's another shift, twist, or turn, or upheaval that you're having to navigate. And so, whatever this Virgo Pisces energy has brought for you, with the nodes being in Virgo and Pisces, now is going to be another chapter to that story of whatever you've been navigating. Now, our once we get to our second set of eclipses for 2026, we have our total solar eclipse in Leo, which will be our first eclipse in Leo at 20 degrees, August 12th. And then we will have our lunar eclipse in Pisces at 4 degrees, August 28th. And I just want to mention that this will not be the last eclipse in Virgo. We will have another eclipse in Virgo at the beginning of 2027, which will be the final eclipse in the Virgo Pisces axis. But this will be the last eclipse in Pisces, this one here on August 28th. So we will start to find that whatever we've been navigating around the changes that have taken place the last year in our lives with this Virgo Pisces story is going to start to come to an end, a finalization, a completion, a culmination. So now let's touch on the 2026 Mercury retrogrades. So this year we have Mercury retrograding in all water signs, which is interesting. So this year, Mercury is going to be working with emotions, intuition, spirituality. That is what water represents. It is feminine energy. It is the connection that we have to one another intuitively and emotionally. So we want to keep that in mind with this year going through these Mercury retrogrades. And Mercury on a general level rules communication, forms of communication, so like mail and email, technology, texts, cell phones, vehicles. And so during Mercury retrogrades, those are always a time where we can see um, glitches in those areas, issues with cars, like I've experienced that. That's definitely a thing because Mercury does rule vehicles in forms of now communication forms of commuting. And so we can see, issues around that. But with Mercury being in water signs, this is really working with us emotionally and spiritually and intuitively, which I find very interesting. So we will have our first Mercury retrograde of the year in Pisces, starting depending on your time zone, February 25th or 26th, and Mercury will be stationing retrograde at 22 degrees of Pisces. And then March 20th, Mercury will station direct at 8 degrees. So you want to check in your birth chart where these degree points. And again, I'll be posting separate videos for each of these retrograde periods and getting into the pre-shadow and post-shadow, because you always want to pay attention a few weeks before Mercury stations and a few weeks after Mercury stations, because we're still kind of in that energy. If you pay attention to what is showing up a few weeks before Mercury stations, that gives you an idea of some of the themes that you will be revisiting during the Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is just really good time to revisit. For example, if you have a course and there's something you want to change about that course, it's a great time to do changes for anything around writing or reading. Like courses or anything around communicating, things like that. If you're wanting to revisit and make changes to anything, this is a really great time to do that. Now, our second Mercury retrograde is going to be in Cancer from June 29th to July 23rd, and that will be from 26 degrees of Cancer to 16 degrees of Cancer. And then our final Mercury retrograde will be in Scorpio. And that will be Mercury will station retrograde October 24th and then station direct November 13th, and will move from 20 degrees of Scorpio to 5 degrees of Scorpio. So, again, you want to see if you have any personal planets or points around these degree points, because these Mercury retrogrades will be working with you more personally. Now let's take a look at the other planetary retrogrades. So Saturn will retrograde in Aries July 26th to December 10th, 2026. We will have Uranus retrograde in Gemini from September 10th to February 8th of 2027. And then Neptune retrograde in Aries will be from July 7th to December 12th, 2026. And Pluto retrograde will be in Aquarius from May 6th to October 15th, 2026. So now let's take a look at January. So January 1st, we have Mercury entering Capricorn. On the 6th, we have our Venus cazimi at 16 degrees of Capricorn. On the 7th, we have the Venus-Mars conjunction at 18 degrees of Capricorn. On the 9th, we have our Mars cazimi at 19 degrees of Capricorn. And we also have a Venus opposition to Jupiter retrograde at 20 degrees. Then we have a Mars opposition to Jupiter retrograde at 20 degrees. Then on the 17th, we have Venus entering Aquarius. On the 20th, we have the Mars trine to Uranus and sextile to Neptune, and also Mercury entering Aquarius. On the 21st, we have our Mercury cazimi at 1 degree of Aquarius. On the 23rd, we have Mars entering Aquarius. 26th, Neptune enters Aries. And on the 27th, we have our Mars Pluto conjunction at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So the chart I decided to use for the slide is for January 20th, because it kind of put us in the middle of all this. The first portion of January, we have so much energy in Capricorn, and then that shifts into Aquarius. I want you to keep in mind, I'm kind of jump into the Mars Pluto conjunction quick, only because whenever we have like these conjunctions with planets, keep in mind that as those planets connect, because by the time we get to the end of the year, we'll have the Mars Pluto opposition, and that can be such a difficult tension um energy. Like, it creates a lot of tension. Pluto ruling obsessions and power and control dynamics, and Mars ruling violence and anger and aggressiveness. This can be a difficult energy, and so I want you to just pay attention to what is showing up at the time of the conjunction, because what I have noticed in my own personal um through my own just astrology research and tracking things, that when these planets have conjunctions and then connect through squares and oppositions after the fact, there's a story playing out. There's more to whatever was started at the time of that conjunction. So pay attention to kind of what is showing up with the Mars Pluto conjunction, because by the time we get to the end of the year and even halfway through the year, when we're dealing with the Mars square and then Mars and Pluto opposition, there could be more about whatever was showing up at that time. Now, with the Neptune entering Aries, again, this is a huge thing, right? Like Neptune takes 14 years to transit a sign. So we've had Neptune in Pisces for 14 years. And this is a huge shift. I'm going to create a separate forecast on this, but both Neptune and Saturn entering Aries is going to bring changes to leadership, government, identity. Um, Military. Aries rules military, war. Neptune and Aries, it coincides with the Civil War, the American Civil War, which I'm going to get into in the forecast that I do for Neptune and Aries separately. But it's a big energy, and Neptune takes 164 to 165 years to transit the zodiac. So, like, this has not happened since mid 1800s, and it coincides with the abolishment of slavery and the Civil War. And if you see what's going on in the world now, as scary as it is, and as much as we don't want it to happen, it looks like that's the direction that we're going in. So we just want to watch that. And the same with Uranus and Gemini. That is another coinciding energy of the Civil War and war and nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So we definitely want to be aware of that. Now, once also, I want to touch on like this actual chart here with the Mars sextile to Neptune and trine, because this Uranus retrograde at like these Uranus and Neptune being at those final degrees of Taurus and Pisces, especially this Uranus at Taurus, it's almost like there's a finalization, like a finalizing or a completing of something. Whatever the Taurus themes and changes have brought up with this Uranus, and especially to whatever we've been moving through the last year or so, since Uranus has been moving back and forth over these degree points. Whatever we've been navigating, this is a time where there could just be something else around that. There could be now trines are positive energies generally. They trines I don't even like to just focus on the fact that they're positive, but it's just that there's something just kind of flowing in without work, without having to take action. That is what a trine is. It's like something kind of just manifesting on its own without really having to do much. A sextile is where there can be an opportunity or you become aware of something, but you have to take action. And so Uranus and Mars with the sextile to even Saturn and Neptune, there could be something around what you've been navigating, I would say the last year, where you can take action or move forward with something. Of course, you know what this may look like in your own world. Let's get into February. So on the 3rd, we have Uranus will station direct. On the 6th, Mercury will enter Pisces. On the 10th, Venus will enter Pisces. On the 11th, Mercury enters shadow for that very first Mercury retrograde we're going to have. So you want to start paying attention around the 11th of February, what is showing up around mercurial themes and topics, because you could be revisiting, reevaluating, whatever's kind of showing up for you. Again, you want to watch any forms of communication. So maybe conversations that you're having or information you're receiving, things like that. On the 13th, we have Saturn entering Aries. I will post a separate forecast going deep into that energy as well. On the 17th, we have our first solar eclipse of the season, our first set of eclipses of 2026 in Aquarius at 28 degrees. And then on the 20th, we have our Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. On the 22nd, we have our Venus trine to Jupiter, which is going to be nice after this kind of interesting energy. And then on the 25th, we will have Mercury station retrograde in Pisces. And on the 27th, we will have our Mars square to Uranus. So if we just touch on, we kind of already touched on the eclipses. So I want to touch on the Saturn Neptune conjunction, even though I'm going to be making a separate forecast. A lot of what I've researched about past Saturn Neptune conjunctions and I mean, it's never happened at 0 degrees of Aries. Like, this is the 0 degree point. This is Aries point. This is the most powerful point for Aries. So, the fact that we have Saturn and Neptune forming a conjunction, like the last time I think we had a Saturn Neptune conjunction is like 1700. Like, it's so, it doesn't happen, right? Like, I mean, in Aries, of course it happens every like 30 something years because it takes Saturn 30 years to transit the zodiac. But in Aries, like hundreds, thousands of years, like you have to go way, way, way back, and it's never happened. I think the 1 degree point when it was Aries at 11 degrees, and then it was Aries at like something. It's never happened at Aries 0 degrees. So this is huge. Like, this is very significant that it's happening at that very first degree of the zodiac. So this is why I say, like, there's definitely going to be changes to government, to countries, to borders, to leadership. Like, what we now know as what government is, I believe is going to completely dismantle. And it's how it's going to happen. I mean, we can kind of foresee some things already taking place. I just think we're in for some surprises, that's for sure, but we definitely want to prepare for what can be coming. And I don't like to push like fear or anything like that, but I mean, you can't just live with your head in the clouds either. You have to prepare and be aware and don't live in a fear, but just be aware, just know what's going on. Now, on the 22nd, when we have the Venus trine to Jupiter. Hold on. I thought, yeah, because this here is going to be the Saturn Neptune conjunction. I'll be at 0 degrees, 45 minutes of, uh, of Aries. And then in this chart here, is I thought I chose, oh right, I did choose the Mars square to Uranus. But between the Mars square on the 22nd and the conjunction, we're going to have Venus forming a positive trine to Jupiter retrograde here. So that will bring a little bit of kind of relief or um positive support to anything difficult that may be coming up at this time. And again, you always want to know your own birth chart to know where this is taking place in your birth chart, and if you have any personal planets or points around these degree points that we're talking about, because you'll definitely feel it. It will definitely show up for you in some way, personally, on a personal level. So with the Mars square to Uranus, Mars being an Aquarius, so this could have something to do just seeing what's going on in the world right now around riots. This can definitely be something huge around riots and the collective and people because it's Aquarius. We have Mars here. Uranus can bring in disruption and chaos. And being in Taurus. So there's definitely something around the end of February that could erupt around riots, war, the Insurrection Act, the government having to put some type of power on the people. Because again, this is just after the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries. So at the time of me recording this, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in Minnesota. And so I'm kind of already foreseeing what this energy can bring. And they're already talking about Trump kind of bringing in, is it the Insurrection Act or is that just in Canada? I'm Canadian. So, but it's something similar. It's something similar to that where it gives basically the government more power over the people. And I can definitely see that taking place. So we do want to watch for that. Now, if we get into March 2026 on the 2nd, we have Mars entering Pisces. On the 3rd, we have our total lunar eclipse in Virgo at 12 degrees. On the 6th, we have Venus entering Aries. On the 7th, we have Venus conjunct Neptune and our Mercury cazimi. On the 8th, we have the Venus Saturn conjunction. On the 10th, we will have Jupiter station direct. On the 18th, we will have our new moon in Pisces at 28 degrees. And where this will not be an eclipse, it's definitely going to hold an eclipse energy and whatever's played out around this set of eclipses and the story that's played out with this whole Virgo Pisces axis. There's definitely going to be more to that story showing up at this time, so you want to be aware of that. On the 20th, we will have Mercury stationed direct in Pisces at 18 degrees, and Mercury will actually station direct conjunct the North Node, so that'll be really interesting. And you'll definitely want to pay attention on that day, March 20th, for any powerful conversations or information, because that on the conjunction to the North Node, which you can see here in this chart, the North Node representing a new direction or journey that we're moving into. And because this is a new channel, like on my old channel, I had actually explained the nodes and stuff, but I will make another video when I make a video about the nodes going into Libra or Leo and Aquarius, how the North Node represents this new direction. It is this karmic journey that we're moving towards, and a journey that our soul really wants to take. And the nodes tend to bring up experiences and situations that seem like they're out of our control, and they change our direction in some way. And the North Node is the direction we're moving into, and the South Node tends to be the direction that we're moving away from, or habits or themes or whatever that we're kind of that are old, that are no longer in alignment, or parts of us or parts of our world that we're having to release and let go of because they're just no longer meant to stay with us on our journey. And that is kind of part of this Virgo Pisces axis, is the South Node, where Virgo can tend to be a little bit controlling, or wanting to hold on to outcomes, or wanting to have some type of control over a situation. And I've really talked about this in my forecast I posted last year. It's on my old channel. Um, but a part of this, on a general level, on a collective level, is learning how to trust and letting go. And that is kind of that North Node, like learning how to trust the universe, letting go of the need to control, and surrendering. And if you have issues with that, that the universe would put things in your path or experiences to kind of force you to have to surrender. And I definitely experienced that last year. And I know a lot of other people too did as well, because I know 2025 was a difficult year for a lot of people. And I believe that 2025 was difficult because things had to be dismantled and taken down, whether it was, I mean, emotionally, spiritually, no matter how it looks like in a relationship or a home or whatever, things kind of had to be taken away that we're no longer in alignment, so that we can grow on a more positive foundation that's more in alignment with who we are now and the direction that we're moving in. And so, I mean, these experiences can be extremely challenging, but I do believe it is to get us on a better path ahead. Now, on the 21st, we'll have the Mars trine to Jupiter. So, hold on. Where did we? Um, did we? I don't even know. Oh, yeah, I think I went through all of the dates of March. So if we just take a look here, this chart here, I did the Venus Saturn conjunction. So again, you just want to pay attention to what's showing up at the time of these conjunctions, because when we have our squares, oppositions, and trines, there can be, something else around the theme that was kind of brought up at the time of the conjunction. It's almost like new moons, like really, it's almost like a new moon when we have conjunctions to planets, because it's like there is a story that is seeded at that time. And as the planet transits the zodiac and aspects the other planet, there's other kind of changes and twists and turns to the story, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay, let's get to April 2026. So on the 3rd, we have Venus square to Pluto. On the 8th, we have Mars sextile to Uranus. On the 9th, we have Mars entering Aries. On the 13th, we have Mars conjunct Neptune at 2 degrees of Aries. So that will be an interesting new energy, right? Because we now have Neptune in Aries, which is going to be new. On the 14th, we have Mercury in Aries, or Mercury enters Aries. On the 19th, we will have the Mars Saturn conjunction at 7 degrees of Aries. That's going to be another new sign. So once we get to April, things start to change. I've told everybody January, like especially January, is the month to really get things going, create those solid foundations that's going to help you ride the year of 2026 because there is some difficult energy this year and we have to really get our footing so that we don't fall down later on in the year, if you get what I'm saying. So yeah, and then on the 23rd, 24th, Venus will enter Gemini. And again, it happens at midnight, so it really depends on your time zone. And then on the 25th, we will have Uranus enter Gemini, which is another huge shift. So everything literally shifts in April with the Mars conjunction to Neptune, Saturn. Uranus is going to enter Gemini. So there's going to be some huge shifts in April that we'll see. Now, Mars ruling anger, aggression, conflict in the sign of Aries. So it's very strong energy forming a conjunction to Saturn, which is government authority, like leaders, there can be something really implemented at this time in April with that conjunction to Neptune and to Saturn. So we want to watch for that. This is where there could be some amping up around a war or conflict or riots. So yeah, we just want to be aware of that. And then with the Uranus entering Gemini, again, that can add to that a little bit, but this is when I think that we will start to see some interesting things around AI. Um, and even like we may have to watch what we're seeing online around the war and conflict. Is it true? Or is it just feeding propaganda? Like we're really going to have to use our discernment this year is really going to be important because there's going to be so much going on that it's going to be hard to know what is true, what is not true. There can be a lot of fake stuff out or AI stuff out to promote fear and worry or to promote there could be, oh well look, this is going on. So now we need to do this because this is happening, but yet that's not even happening and they're just lying about it so that they can, do this, if you get what I'm saying. So we just got to watch for a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of that going on this year. Now let's get to May. On May 2nd, we have Mercury entering Taurus. May 4th, we have our Mars square to Jupiter. On the 6th, we have Pluto stationing retrograde at 5 degrees of Aquarius. On the 17th, we have Mercury entering Gemini. On the 18th, we have Venus entering Cancer, and Mars will enter Taurus. And then on the 25th or 26th, depending on your time zone, we will have the Mars square to Pluto. So again, we have that Mars Pluto conjunction at the end of January. Now we're going to have that square. So whatever started in January with the Mars Pluto conjunction, now we can, this is where there can be something arising around that. So if we look out into the world, January, which is, I'm in January and I'm a little late with the forecast, but at the time of me recording this, it's riots in Minnesota and all of that stuff. And lots of talk about war in Iran and all of that stuff. And so there can be more around those themes showing up at this time in your own personal world. What is taking place? What is showing up? Is there conflict with someone? Are you moving through something with a boss or coworker around? Is there anything around your home that you're having to deal with? Now there can be something else around that showing up. So we just want to pay attention. Now, the Mars square to Jupiter. So I think this one, yeah, this chart here is the Mars square to Jupiter, and then this chart here is our Mars square to Pluto retrograde. So at this point, um, okay, so let's take a look at this chart here for a second. So Mars will be in Aries. So right away, what we want to look at is Mars. This is a very strong Mars, first of all, because Mars is in Aries. Mars rules Aries. So Mars is at home, forming a square to Jupiter in Cancer. So Cancer rules our emotions, home, family, and being in Jupiter's exalted in Cancer, actually. So we could see something here around housing prices, something with inflation, I would say even to around or something that has to do with the family. And again, I'm even feeling like this could even to have a lot to do with immigration, a lot to do with that. Because again, it's ruling kind of that family unit and family, which is Cancer. And so yeah, I could see that. I'm just taking a look here to see if there's anything that's really standing out to me. And then in this one here, at this time, if we look, the Mars is now in Taurus. So this is not necessarily like when Mars is in Taurus, Mars is at fall. Not, it doesn't, Mars does not like to be in Taurus. Taurus is a very kind of slow, grounded energy, and Mars is a very go, 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 let's get things moving energy. So it's a contradiction, right? So there's this kind of angry Mars that's wanting to get things going and off the ground. And then there's this Taurus energy, like, I'm going to take my time. And it's squaring Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And so this is this is where we could see a lot of conflict around um riots and people and stuff like that. So, but again, we want to pay attention to, what was in your own personal life, what was taking place at that Mars Pluto conjunction. June 2026. So on the 1st, we have Mercury entering Cancer. On the 9th, we have the Venus Jupiter conjunction at 25 degrees of Cancer. This is going to be a really nice energy. I really do love this because Jupiter is exalted. We have both benefic planets in Cancer. So this can be a really nice time where we can really get some support or have some really um just kind of positive, not just positive vibes, but like a positive outlook and flip in the direction that we're moving in. There could be something really beautiful coming in to help guide you towards whatever it is you're working on or moving towards. So it's a really good energy to utilize. On the 13th, we have Venus entering Leo. On the 17th, we have Venus opposing Pluto retrograde. So we had Venus conjunct Pluto January 19th. And so if we think back to maybe like what was showing up for you around January 19th, this could give you an idea of what that opposition could possibly bring. Like maybe there was some difficulties with a relationship or money, finances, maybe a family member or a friend, and that there could be something else around that showing up for you. On the 19th, we have Chiron. That's another thing. I completely forgot to mention that. Chiron is entering Taurus. That is another major shift this year. However, Chiron is going to move back into Aries. It takes Chiron roughly about 8 years. Is it 8 years? To transit each sign. So we've had Chiron in Aries for quite a long time, which has really changed identities and what we know to be individuality. And so Chiron now moving into Taurus, that's going to bring a lot of changes around stability, security, safety, what we know to be kind of grounded, what we know to be very secure. Have we gotten too used to comfort and safety and security? And that could be a lot of what is coming up. I'm going to post a separate video. I want to do a lot more research on it too, of like past Chiron and Taurus events. So I will post a separate forecast about that and get into it. So definitely watch for that on my channel. And then, I'll talk about all 12 rising signs and how that may affect your sign. Now, on the 28th, we have Mars entering Gemini, and Mars is going to form a sextile to Jupiter. And so once we get to the end of June, we have that buildup of the dynamic Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini, which is going to be huge. There's definitely going to be something going on at this time, worldly and collectively. And in your own individual life, you want to in your own world, you want to know where you have Gemini and the houses that Mars rules, Uranus rules, and do you have any personal planets or points around this 3 degrees? Because this is where we are going to have the conjunction, and which I have the chart on the next slide because that happens as soon as we get into July. But there is definitely going to be something big that takes place when we do. So when Mars enters Gemini, Mars is going to form a sextile to Jupiter, which again, a lot of astrologers don't even bother putting sextiles into forecasts, but I do because they can show up just more on a personal level where there could be like an opportunity or kind of something coming in that you want to be aware of because it is something you have to take action on. And so you just want to be aware at that time what is showing up for you. Now, on the 29th, we have Mercury stationing retrograde in Cancer. And on the 30th, we're going to have Jupiter entering Leo. And again, I will post a separate video going into the Jupiter and Leo energy and how that will be affecting all 12 rising signs. July 2026. July is like probably one of the biggest months of the year. July and September, I would say. The biggest months of the year, July. Huge. July 4th, which is crazy for America because we're going to have July 4th, America's birthday, Mars Uranus conjunction at 3 degrees of Gemini right here. So not only are we having this Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini, but there's also this kind of trine to Pluto. So there is a Pluto influence and there is a Neptune influence because they're only at 4 degrees. They're a degree off. But this is where there can definitely be something around technology, communications, violence, chaos, disruption, anger, like yeah, there's definitely going to be something. And the problem is that at the time of me recording this video, there's so much different things going on that it's hard to pinpoint what exactly it could be. It could be something around AI, it could be something around war, it could be something around riots. But this is definitely a day and a time period that we want to pay attention closely. And when I post the video of Uranus and Gemini, will be an energy that I cover. But you also want to pay attention in your own life with your own chart. Do you have any degree points here? And what house is this landing in? That is going to give you an idea of how this energy can affect you. We want to remember that Mars rules accidents, Mars rules anger, aggression, violence, conflict. Mars also, though, rules, I don't just want to focus on the negative part, like Mars can also rule motivation, drive, willpower, can really get things moving if we utilize it in the right way. Now, Uranus, am I saying Uranus? I mean Mars. Did I say Uranus? I mean Mars. Mars rules anger, aggression, conflict, violence, war, but also motivation, willpower, and drive. Uranus rules disruption and chaos and things just shaking up and coming in out of nowhere. That is a Uranus energy. So there's definitely something happening here. Like, I would not drive around this time because Gemini rules cars. I say Mercury. Gemini rules cars. And actually, at this time, Mercury is retrograde Cancer. So, Mercury being the dispositor of this energy, because Mercury rules Gemini, the fact that Mercury is retrograde also is not helping mitigate that energy. So, I would say, like, this is not a good time to drive. There could be something here too around commute, transportation. We may see something around transportation. So, this is a day and a week that you just want to be very mindful and aware of your surroundings, what's going on, and not don't keep your head in the clouds. Stay positive. There's no reason to live in fear, but you want to be aware. You have to be aware. You just have to have that awareness. And so, yeah. But we'll talk about this obviously closer to this date. We will discuss more things and stuff. But yeah, this is a time once we get to July, things really start to pick up. Now on the 5th, we have the Mars trine to Pluto, which I kind of already talked about because on the 5th, Mars will form an exact trine to Pluto in Aquarius, which again is going to add to like we want to remember that Pluto when Pluto is transiting a sign. And maybe I'll make an updated, like on my old YouTube channel, I have a Pluto and Aquarius video, but maybe I'll make an updated one because I did that a couple years ago. But Pluto really gets to the bottom of whatever is hidden underneath and digs it up and brings it to the surface. And so with Capricorn ruling governments and corporations and leaders and like, those who rule the world, Pluto exposed a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. Now Pluto is going to enter, like, well, now Pluto is in Aquarius, where Aquarius rules the people, the collective. So there's going to be a lot of changes to that, how we connect to one another and the different groups within society, and exposing a lot of even to like what just came to mind is like a lot of people that you see online that are clearly paid to push a narrative. Like, I feel like Pluto's really exposing that. Like, if you are on one side or the other and you are like being paid to like say certain things to push a certain type of narrative to sway people, like I just feel like now it's just so out there and known. Like, it's so obvious. But I feel like Pluto is really kind of exposing that too. Now, On the 7th, we have Neptune stationing retrograde at 4 degrees of Aries. On the 9th, we have Venus entering Virgo, and will form a conjunction to the North Node. So that will be a day that you want to pay attention here. Like Virgo is going to be, or the why actually that is not the north node, that is the south node. So that's a typo because the south node is in Virgo. So when Venus enters Virgo and forms a conjunction to the south node, this could be a day where there's something very clear on something that you're having to release and let go of, or there could be some a lot of support around that, whatever you've been moving through around the last like year and a half at this point. So, definitely pay attention to that date. And then on the 13th, Venus will square Uranus. So there could be something unexpected around money or finances or relationships on a personal level. And again, we'll talk more about this. I'm going to post like monthly forecasts and stuff. So we will talk a lot more about this. This is just to give you kind of a heads up. On the 18th, we will have Uranus trine Pluto. So then Uranus will make that exact trine to Pluto. And then on the 20th, we have Jupiter trine Neptune retrograde opposing Pluto. So there is quite an interesting conversation this year because it doesn't even just happen now, like later on in the year. There's also an interesting conversation with like Neptune and Uranus, and there's this ongoing kind of dynamic between Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus that's quite interesting. And I feel like it has to do with the people, and that Aries, like the government and leaders, and then Gemini. How are we communicating? How are we forming groups and getting together to it's I mean it's almost like forming groups based on certain beliefs and forming groups based on like like different leaders. It's like I'm feeling like there could be like separation taking place at this time where like we just want to make sure because there's a lot of like around civil war and stuff, right? So we want to make sure like we just got to be aware of that because there is this ongoing kind of dynamic with that energy. 20, I hope you guys understand because sometimes like I feel a lot intuitively and I say it because I don't ever want to hold it back because I don't know if somebody needs to hear it, but sometimes it doesn't make sense or sometimes I say it and it's like worded all weird. So I hope you guys like don't get confused. It's not confusing. Anyways, so um on the 21st, Jupiter will form a sextile to Uranus. On the 23rd, Mercury stations direct. On the 24th, Neptune retrograde will form a sextile to Pluto retrograde, which again is that ongoing kind of conversation between Neptune, Pluto, Uranus. And then on the 26th, we have our lunar nodes entering Leo and Aquarius, and Saturn stationing retrograde at 14 degrees of Aries. And then on the 29th, we will have Venus square Mars. So when we had the Venus Mars conjunction, January when was it? January 7th. I was gonna say 17th, but no, January 7th, we had the Venus Mars conjunction. So what was taking place at the beginning of the year around, maybe money, finances, relationships, one-on-one connections, your personal values. This happened in Capricorn. So this could be around career, your business, or um was there something that you really wanted to build or create? Like there could be another kind of milestone to this at this time. Because remember, I said, those conjunctions are like new moons. And so if you really watch that and become aware of it, you'll actually see how these stories play out with these planets and how they show up in your life, especially when you journal and you really track it, which is what I've done for years. Like it's actually insane, which is what I really like to teach people to do because it's crazy. And one of the best ways to predict a future, not even like you want to predict your future, but you just want to foresee any possible difficulties or any possible opportunities. And the best way to do that is to look into the past and track current events so that you can go back and say like, oh wow, that happened at this time. So now let's get into August. August 6th, we have Venus entering Libra. August 9th, we have Mercury entering Leo. On the 11th, we have Mars entering Cancer. On the 12th, we have our total solar eclipse in Leo at 20 degrees. And so this will be the first eclipse in Leo. So again, more to that story that whatever is going to play out in this whole Leo Aquarius axis. On the 17th, we have Mars square to Neptune. And so Mars is going to be here in I thought I put that. Which one is that here? Oh, right. Yeah, because we also have the Mars square to Saturn, which is not going to be a nice energy either. So actually, did I Mars enters Cancer? Right. So, yeah, on the 17th, Mars is going to square Neptune. On the 21st, Venus is going to oppose Saturn. So again, there could be more to the Venus story of the Venus Saturn conjunction, which also took place in February, I think it was. Um, And then on the 25th, Mercury enters Virgo, 27th, Mercury Cazimi, 28th, lunar eclipse in Pisces at 4 degrees, and then 30th, Venus enters pre-shadow because Venus, we have a Venus retrograde this year. And so I will also make a forecast about that. Venus retrogrades are a time where we just want to watch our finances. People can come back from the past, old relationship dynamics. Um, and this is going to be in Scorpio and Libra. So, and this Venus retrograde's actually not going to necessarily be a nice one. The end of the year is not the greatest if collectively. I think it'll be different on an individual level, but you definitely want to be aware. But on a collective level, by the time we leave, there's definitely a lot of chaos going on. And it's just not a very good supportive Venus. But on the 31st, we have Jupiter trine Saturn. So if we take a look at these charts here, here's the Jupiter in Leo forming a trine to Saturn retrograde, which I didn't put retrograde in the thing, but there's a Saturn retrograde. So this is where whatever Saturn has stirred up in the Aries area of your life, but also in the Aries area of the world. So if whatever's been going on with the government, military, leaders and stuff like that, there could definitely be something coming in. We want to remember that Jupiter expands things. Sometimes Jupiter brings too much of everything, right? Jupiter can bring too much of a good thing or too much of a bad thing. Jupiter is just the planet of expansion. And so, yes, Jupiter brings abundance and is very beneficial, is a benefic planet, but Jupiter is the planet of growth. And so there's growth everywhere, like sometimes growth even where you don't want it. And so that's where we just got to be cautious. Like people that have Venus Jupiter conjunctions in their birth chart, it can be a really amazing energy. But I guarantee, like, there is some times where you see somebody with a Jupiter Venus conjunction or a nice, and it's like in their first house or whatever, and they struggle with laziness or overeating, overindulging because it's that Jupiter energy. Yes, it is two benefic planets, but you still have to create balance. My daughter has Jupiter and Venus in the first house, and she doesn't have like an overeating or anything like that, but it is an energy that she has, and I do see it play out in her life. So you still do need to have balance, um, even when it's benefic planets, and you still do have to have awareness and be cautious, even when it's like you can never just sit there and be like, oh yeah, I don't got to worry about it. That's a positive alignment. Like, no, you still have to be aware, like not necessarily, and again, I'm not like it's not like fear or anything like that, but just, you always want balance, positive balance. So September 2026, we have Mars square Saturn. On the 10th, we have Mercury entering Libra and Venus entering Scorpio. We also have our Uranus stationing retrograde at 5 degrees of Gemini. So we had Uranus station in Gemini last year, but did Uranus get to 0, 1 degrees? I'd have to check. But this is the farthest that Uranus has gone. Now Uranus is staying in Gemini. Uranus is not going to move back to Taurus. The Uranus and Taurus journey is complete now. But whatever Uranus has stirred up, and again, we will talk about that in the Uranus and Gemini forecast. I'll touch on the pre-shadow, like what some things we should watch for and what the retrograde can bring. And then usually with retrogrades of any planets, there's a there's a reworking of that energy. So like with Mercury retrogrades, there could be some rethinking or reevaluating something around like paperwork or decision making or choices or writing a book or courses or whatever, something around communication. Uranus, this could be like something like a situation was brought up or an experience that happened. There could be something about that that shows back up that has to be kind of looked at again. So we'll touch on all those energies. On September 15th, we'll have Venus square Pluto, um, which, yeah, oh, right, yeah, because the Venus is going to connect to Pluto and Mars, I believe, yeah, through her Venus retrograde. So, because at this point, Venus is pre-shadow. So, yeah, we want to pay attention at this time, like what is showing up collectively and individually, because Venus is going to connect to Pluto 3 times. So this is the first initial square to Pluto. And we want to remember that this can't, and Venus is in Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto. So this is not a happy Venus, right? This is a Venus that could be dealing with a lot of conflict, a lot of obsessive behavior, a lot of abuse, a lot of power and control dynamics. So we just want to be careful. And I know that's not going to be for everybody, but it's definitely going to be for some people. Like this is not a happy, I don't even like really putting that out there, but this is not, I'd rather you guys be aware of this than not. So I just say it. But this is not a happy Venus. And so, that we just want to be aware of this. What is showing up at this time? Because you're going to be revisiting those themes and topics 2 more times. When Venus is retrograde and then when Venus goes direct. Now on the 17th, Chiron's going to re-enter Aries. On the 27th, Mars is going to enter Leo. And then Mars becomes stronger. Mars does well in Leo. Leo is a fire sign. So this Mars energy is moving out of Cancer because Mars doesn't do the greatest in Cancer. And then this is a very emotional Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer is an interesting energy because it's very emotional. It can be very passive aggressive too. But is Mars is gaining its kind of will back and energy to move forward and do things. And so that also is going to affect the Saturn Neptune energy and kind of what's been going on there. And then on the 30th, we have Mercury entering Scorpio. So once we get to October, on the 2nd, we're going to have Mars trine Neptune. On the 3rd, Venus is going to station retrograde and Mars is going to oppose Pluto. So again, remember that Mars Pluto kind of conversation, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but this is where there can be more to that story coming up at this time. Mars and Pluto brings up, and this is an opposition, so this is conflict. There's balance needed here. This is where there can be power and control dynamics, violence, conflict. Pluto rules obsessive behaviors. Pluto um, rules death and transformation and, rebirth too. Mars is what kind of brings in that anger, violence, war, aggressiveness. And so with Mars and Pluto mixed together, that's where we get a lot of power and control dynamics and abuse kind of with this. So we just want to watch for these energies. On the 7th, we have Mars forming a sextile to Uranus retrograde. On the 10th, we'll have Venus retrograde square Mars. So again, this is going to be Venus. Did I put that here? Right. This is the opposition here. This is the Mars Pluto opposition here. Which there's going to be a T squared to Mercury. I just want to take a look. Um, because there is also a connection to Neptune. So there, which is going to play into the energy for sure. Like there can definitely be something I would say at the beginning of October that um we hear about on the news or see on social media. Like there can definitely be something going on, and then in your own personal world, you just want to be cautious of, just know how this is showing up for you. If you have any personal planets or points, what houses this is affecting, because there can definitely be something there that you want to watch for. And then Venus on the 10th, Venus is going to square. Oh, so which one? Sorry, I just okay. Here I did the Venus square to Pluto. I knew I did one of them. I couldn't remember. So okay, so Venus is then yeah, Venus is gonna square uh Mars on the 10th. So that's where there can be conflict. Venus is in Scorpio, Mars is in Leo. So Mars has a lot more power than Venus. Mars is a lot stronger than Venus. Venus is not doesn't do well in Scorpio. She doesn't like being in Scorpio. This is a Venus that is far away from home. Venus rules Taurus and Libra. So Venus is at fall in Scorpio. And Venus is in Mars's sign. Venus is in Pluto's sign, and she's squaring both of them this month. And so that is why this is just not a happy month for, certain relationship dynamics and financial situations and yeah, we just want to be careful of those. So these are the dates here to just watch for. Um, Especially if you are somebody that is in any type of like abusive relationship, or if you get into a situation this year and this and there and I'm not saying this to scare anybody, but I mean, if you are somebody that's watching this video and at some point this year something happens and you get into some type of like really unsafe situation at this time, please don't put yourself out there don't be walking home alone at night if somebody's been stalking you. Just don't be taking risks, because this is not a risk taking energy. And I'm only saying that because I'm looking out for you, and I want to help you guys just have that awareness. So on the 23rd, we have we'll have our Venus retrograde Cazimi, which is when we have Venus and the Sun form a conjunction. And that is where there can be some type of insight, clarity, or something coming in support around whatever you've been navigating with the Venus retrograde journey. On the 24th, we'll have Mercury stationing retrograde in Scorpio. And then on the 25th, we're going to have Venus retrograde re-enter Libra. So Venus is going to retrograde back into Libra. And then Mars is kind of working and not far behind her. So there's this Mars Venus energy, which is a lot around like mindset, communication, and information, and then relationships. And I'm saying this more in like a worldly kind of aspect, like what are we seeing on the news around relationships between countries? What are we seeing on the news and social media around, certain dynamics between leaders and stuff like that? So yeah, we want to watch for that. Then November, we on the 4th, we have Mercury stationing, or we have the Mercury retrograde Cazimi, sorry. And on the 12th, we have Jupiter conjunct the South Node in Libra. So this, I think, is going to be, I hope it's good. I don't know why. I love the nodes. Like I think with the nodes, I have just tracked it so much because they've brought so much changes into my life personally, and I've seen like so much go on with eclipses and the nodes. And so like the nodes usually primarily work with the sun and the moon. They don't tend to pay too much attention to the outer planets, but when we have a planet like Jupiter sitting on the south node and then Mars comes along, like there's something that's going to happen here. This is going to be interesting. So that's why I put that in here. Like, look at this thing in Leo taking place at like 25, 24 degrees. Like, there's going to be something here. There's going to be, and collectively, Leo rules leadership, royalty. So, what is going on with the leaders at this time? There's definitely going to be something taking place with the leaders of the countries, and yeah, we want to be watching for that. On the 13th, Mercury stations direct, and then Venus stations direct. On the 14th, Mars will form a conjunction to the South Node. So it's like 2 days after we have the Jupiter conjunctions. Like that's why it's not that far apart. It's like really close. Which is why too we may want to pay attention like on the 12th, like what is Jupiter bringing in? What are we seeing kind of go on with the Jupiter South Node conjunction? Because that can kind of give us an idea of what's going to happen with the Mars South Node conjunction. On the 16th, we'll have Mars Jupiter conjunction in Leo at 25 degrees. And then, yeah, again, like it's just another conjunction, really, like with all of them. But the Jupiter Mars will be exact at 25 degrees. And then on the 25th, Mars is going to enter Virgo. And on the 29th, Uranus retrograde will form a trine to Pluto. And so that could also be interesting here, which is this chart here. So Uranus at 3 degrees retrograde, and then Pluto is at 3 degrees. Um, there could be something here. I would say this probably has something to do with like AI, technology. What are we seeing? What are we seeing like going on in the AI world? And is there something around that that has caused some type of upheaval or hurdle or you know what I mean? Like there could be something around that because it's a trine. And again, like trines are usually positive and usually bring in like support or like easy flowing energy where we don't really have to work much to we don't have to take action. But this could definitely have to do with like AI technology and something around that. Then we get to December 2026, and on the 4th, Venus is going to re enter Scorpio. Mars will form a square to Uranus. And on the 6th, Mercury is going to enter Sagittarius. On the 9th, Venus will square Pluto. On the 10th, Saturn is going to station direct at 7 degrees of Aries. On the 12th, Neptune is going to station direct. And then on the 25th, Mercury is going to enter Capricorn. And so I did choose December 25th just as of this kind of chart to get just to see kind of what is going on with the energy as we exit 2027 and go into 2020 or exit 2026 and go into 2027. This is kind of what we're looking at, what we're dealing with. On the 25th, Mercury enters the Capricorn here. And so this is kind of our chart for end of year. Um, but if we, I think this chart, I believe I did the Uranus, um, Mars square to Uranus. Yeah. So again, though, because we've already had that, did we not? So this is just where they're Oh, right. No, because we had the Mars, so the Mars conjunction to Uranus that took place July 4th. What happened? There can be more to that story. So we want to pay attention in our own lives and in the collective, what happened with that Mars Uranus conjunction, because this is where we can see more tension, more conflict, or something else arising around whatever took place or whatever began, whatever was started. So we want to watch for that collectively and in our own lives as well. Now, this forecast was just to give you guys kind of a general idea of some of the energies. Well, the major energies that we're working with for 2026, but I will be talking a lot more about the specific major alignments that will be taking place this year. I'm going to make separate forecasts getting into each individual one. I am also working on some horoscopes. If you did not watch the first video that that I posted on the channel, I had a rough year, 2025, and my business was hacked, and I lost my whole online business. So I'm working on just my new YouTube channel and getting things running again. And I used to make horoscopes and all of that stuff, and I wasn't a big channel. I was very, very, very small, but I loved the people that I connected with, and I did have people that watched on a regular basis, and so I just want to connect with my people again and offer you guys that this is something I love doing, that I'm passionate about. And so I'm not going to let a stupid individual person like try to, whatever. So I'm going to keep going and we're going to recreate and we're going to do it again. And yeah. So make sure you subscribe and like my video. And I am also working on a podcast, which I will be posting very soon. It's not necessarily about astrology, although I will probably put astrology into the mix, but it's going to be about dealing with everyday life, toxic relationships and toxic habits and overcoming trauma and stuff like that. So, I'll probably have it on this channel, but yeah, that's something to kind of look forward to. But anyways, I hope you enjoy my forecast, and I would love to hear your comments below and make sure you like and subscribe, and I will connect with you in the next one.